I am the Schleg Daddy, and now it's time for me to preview the AFC West. In 2010, the Denver Broncos had what could be best described as a bad year. They ended up finishing 4-12 in last place in the AFC West. They were 26th on offense and rushing yards. They were 32nd on defense in points allowed and 32nd in yards allowed. Bottom line is, they would throw a lot, and some games they would put up big offensive numbers, but they couldn't consistently run the ball, and they couldn't stop any damn body on defense. Not surprisingly, Broncos owner Pat Bowlen sent Josh McDaniels' happy ass on his way packing. And what did he do to attempt to try and restore the Broncos to prominence that they once saw during the Shanahan-Elway era? They hired John Fox. That's right, the Broncos had the number 2 overall pick, meaning they had the second worst record in the league. So Pat Bowlen, in all of his infinite wisdom, decided, well, hell, we was trying to tank the season. And since we couldn't tank it properly, I'm going to go get the guy that delivered Carolina the number 1 pick, John Fox. Oh, that was a good one. So with the hiring of John Fox, it was no surprise that the Broncos were going to focus very heavily on defense in the offseason. It all started with their drafting of an outside linebacker. Yeah, that's how weak this year's draft was. Von Miller was the number 2 overall pick. And they also brought in Raheem Moore in the second round, the safety from UCLA, trying to pair him with Brian Dawkins in the back half of that secondary. They also brought in such notable legends as great bust Derek Harvey, former Jacksonville Jaguar defensive end. There's been a bit of intrigue during the build-up to the 2011 season with the Denver Broncos starting quarterback position. There were widespread rumors that Kyle Orton was a goner, he was going to be traded to Miami or somewhere else, and that it was assumed that Tebow was just going to be the man. No. Denver's decided that Tebow not only is not their man, he's only their number 3 quarterback. That's the way to run an effective organization, Pat Bowlen. You take a quarterback in the first round, and yes, I realize it might be a previous administration that did it, but ultimately, you don't throw around first-round picks like they're candy. You got to find out whether or not Timothy Richard Tebow can be an effective starting NFL quarterback or not. You've had Orton, who I like, at the helm the past couple of seasons, and that has gotten you a big fat bupkis. So why not find out what the hell Tebow has? Are you intentionally trying to win the Andrew Luck sweepstakes? Because you're sure as hell doing a good job of it. The questions facing the Broncos in 2011, who's going to finish the season as the Broncos quarterback? If the team struggles out of the gate or Orton struggles, are they really going to go to Brady Quinn, or are they going to do the right thing and put Tebow back in to find out once and for all what he can do? Is Noshan Moreno actually going to validate his 12th overall draft position by having a breakthrough season at running back? Is Brandon Lloyd going to be able to repeat his breakout performance of 2010? And will this Denver Bronco defense, now with John Fox in charge, be able to stop anybody whatsoever? Outlook for 2011, the Denver Broncos suck. The organization, I think, knows it, and deep down Bronco fans have to look in the mirror and admit it to themselves that this team sucks. It does feel like they're intentionally trying to tank 2011. If they're not, then they're just grossly incompetent and have been for some time now. I'm just saying. I don't think this Bronco team finishes anything better than 3-13, bringing up the rear in the AFC West, and they're definitely a leading contender to get the number 1 overall pick in the 2012 NFL Draft. The Chiefs in 2010 had a great year under head coach Todd Haley. They ended up winning the AFC West with a record of 10-6, and then ended up losing in the wild card round of the playoffs to the Baltimore Ravens. They took advantage of a relatively soft schedule and rode their high-powered rushing attack behind Jamal Charles and Thomas Jones, and a phenomenal early season performance by Dwayne Bowe into the playoffs. There are some notable changes for the Chiefs going into 2011. Most noteworthy is Charlie Weiss's departure as offensive coordinator after 1 season. The Chiefs attempting to address the lack of talent opposite number 1 receiver Dwayne Bowe brought in Jonathan Baldwin in the first round of the draft. Mr. Baldwin, don't piss off Thomas Jones in practice. He will break your jaw. And Steve Breston from the Arizona Cardinals. One other notable change for the Chiefs is now they go from being the hunters like they were in 2010 to being the hunted. And that's an adjustment that a lot of teams, unfortunately, are not able to make after a successful season. So the biggest questions for the Chiefs in 2011 were kind of revolve around their passing game. Can Matt Castle show that he's anything other than an average NFL starting quarterback? And can the Chiefs find a reliable number 2 weapon to go opposite Dwayne Bowe, whether that be Steve Breston, whether that be Jonathan Baldwin, or somebody else that steps up and takes that spot? As far as a player to watch from the Chiefs, in 2010, when I did my pre-draft grades, I thought there were only 2 players that I thought had Hall of Fame potential. One was Ndamukong Suh. The other was Eric Berry. The Chiefs selected Eric Berry number 5 overall in the 2010 draft. And when you take a safety number 5 overall, they can't just be good. They have to be Hall of Fame good. And while Eric Berry struggled out of the gate a little bit early on in 2010, he later established himself throughout the course of the year as a very good safety. Now he has to go from being a very good safety to being one of the premier safeties in the league. And if Eric Berry is able to do that, he will take that Chiefs defensive unit, which is kind of a middle-of-the-road defense, and elevate them just that much more. So for 2011, I do expect Eric Berry to take that next step and become a premier safety in the NFL. I do not, however, expect Matt Castle to establish himself as anything other than an average NFL quarterback, because that's basically what he is. And I'm not sure that the Chiefs are going to be able to find a reliable number 2 option opposite Dwayne Bowe this year. So combine that with a little bit tougher schedule and the fact that they're the ones being chased, I expect the Chiefs to finish somewhere around 7-9 and be 3rd place in the AFC West. Now, one thing I will say that you should look for to happen in 2011 is that Jamal Charles may very well establish himself as the best all-around running back in the NFL. That's right, I just said that. The San Diego Chargers season of 2010 was really a case of Jekyll and Hyde. They started out very, very poorly, which seems to be a trademark of Norv Turner teams in recent years. They started off 2-5 before rallying to finish 9-7. Unfortunately for them, that was only good enough to finish 2nd in the AFC West. On offense, Phillip Rivers had the best season of his career by far. The offense finished 2nd in points in the league, 1st in total yardage, and on defense, they had a phenomenal season. They ended up finishing 1st in yards allowed. And the ultimate tale of San Diego Chargers season in 2010 was the fact that they lost 5 games by 8 points or less. So the Chargers went into the offseason with some things they thought needed to be addressed. They brought in Takeo Spikes to plug into the middle of that 3-4 defense. They took a chance on former Colt safety, the oft-injured but very talented Bob Sanders. They drafted Corey Liggett, the defensive lineman from Illinois, in the 1st round. And on offense, they've made the change, apparently, to make Brian Matthews their starting running back. So the biggest questions facing the Chargers in 2011, first off, will Antonio Gates be able to stay healthy for an entire season? Because when Gates is healthy and in the lineup for the Chargers, he makes that offense run at an entirely different level. Will Ryan Matthews prove that he was worth that 12th overall pick in 2010, especially considering what they had to give up in draft picks in order to move up to get him? And will Vincent Brown, the wide receiver that they drafted this year, bring that much-needed speed at the wide receiver position? Because when you look at guys like Vincent Jackson and Malcolm Floyd, they're really the same type of receiver. And the Chargers really lack that straight up and down the field vertical threat, and also that guy that can create havoc with this quickness in the slot. And that's what they hope Vincent Brown can provide to them. The player to watch on the Chargers is Bob Sanders, the former All-Pro who the last few years has struggled with injury after injury after injury, could potentially bring a new presence to that Chargers secondary and that defense as a whole, which is a scary thought if you think about it, because that Chargers defense was already one of the best, if not the very best, in the NFL last year. And if you add a healthy Bob Sanders on top of that, Now you're not just talking about maybe the best defense, but potentially a dominant defense. What should you expect out of the Chargers in 2011? Well, I'll tell you this much. With their propensity under Norv Turner to start off very slowly, by the end of week 9, you're going to have an idea of exactly who the Chargers are going to be in 2011. If they come out of the gate strong, then you know this is a very, very good team. And I say that because they have to play New England, twice against Kansas City, against the Jets, and Green Bay, all by week 9. And with that strength of schedule in the early part of their season, if they start out of the gate slowly like they traditionally do, the Chargers could just end up digging themselves too big of a hole. What do I ultimately think the Chargers are going to do in 2011? I really think it's going to be about the same, quite honestly. I think they're going to end up finishing around 9-7 and be, yeah, I'm going to say it, second place in the AFC West. Call me crazy, but I think the 2011 AFC West champions will be the Oakland Raiders. In 2010, the Raiders finished 8-8 and were in third place in the AFC West. But some argument could be made that they may very well have been the best team in that division. And where do I get off saying that? Primarily, when you look at their divisional record, they finished 6-0 against the Broncos, Chargers, and Chiefs. So they just struggled against everybody else, but the division they dominated. The Oakland Raiders on offense ended up finishing 6th in points scored. They were second in the NFL in rushing yards, 10th overall in yards. They did struggle on third downs a lot, though. And on defense, they were very good against the pass, but they were only 29th against the run. And the ultimate key to the Raiders' season, when I talk about them losing those games outside of the division, they lost 5 games by 8 points or less. So then you would ask yourself, it sounds like the Raiders had at least an okay year. So that must have been a good thing for Coach Tom Cable. No, Al Davis, the senile old coot, the legendary coach killer himself, decided, hey, it's time to make another coaching change for no damn reason. So he makes Hugh Jackson the new head coach. Now, on top of that, you also saw the departure of Nnamdi Asomugha and Pro Bowl tight end Zach Miller. So there's definitely some change afoot in Oakland in 2011. The Oakland Raiders do have some questions heading into 2011. First and foremost, how is the team going to adjust to new head coach Hugh Jackson? Will Darren McFadden, who finally lived up to his big billing as the 4th overall pick in 2008, he finally had a monster year in 2010. Will he be able to stay healthy and repeat that success in 2011? Will the Raiders be able to post more than 2 wins outside of the AFC West? Will they be able to finally improve upon that pathetic run defense that they've trotted out there in recent years? And how much will that team be hurt by the departures of Pro Bowlers like Asomugha and Zach Miller? Your player to watch for the Raiders in 2011, not surprisingly, is actually quarterback Jason Campbell. Now that he is the unquestioned starter for this Raiders team, is he going to assume a position of leadership and take over this team and be able to lead them to the playoffs? In 2011, I expect the outlook for the Raiders to be very good. I'm predicting them to win the division. Why? Because I think Jason Campbell is going to start off the year as the unquestioned starter, and while he might not be great, he will at least be serviceable and good enough to get the job done at times when they need him to. I expect Darren McFadden to be as good as he was in 2010, if not a little more consistent and a little bit better. You might say to yourself, well, they lost Zach Miller, but they did replace him with Kevin Boss. That is somewhat of a downgrade, but not enough where I think it kills the offense. On defense, losing Asomugha hurts, but let's face it, they were great against the pass and terrible against the run, so how much does it really hurt? They need to improve against that running game, and I think another year with McClain in the middle of that defense is going to help, especially if Lamar Houston emerges as a solid defensive end. Overall, I think the Raiders are going to end up winning this division, and they're going to finish 10-6. Call me crazy, but I think Raider Nation rules the AFC West this year. Let me know what you think down below. I am the Schleg Daddy, and now that I'm done with all the AFC previews, I'll next be moving on to the NFC East. Oh yeah, don't forget to subscribe.